Over the last year and a half, Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson has become one of the hottest names in football, especially for a potential head coaching job. However, though, after the last 2 weeks, a lot of Lions fans are asking the same question: what the hell is going on with the Lions offense? We're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned. It started with an owner who had a last name fans despised, hiring a coach that the experts thought was crazy,
but I got a plan, I swear to you,
who traded for a QB that was said to be washed up. They said the Detroit Lions would never amount to anything, that it would always be the same old Lions. But this team, our team, has a new identity, defined and expressed by the crazy head coach.
Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes, I will beat your ass.
Led by the QB that nobody thought was good. Motor City Mania is in full swing and ready to start. So join the show and be prepared for kneecap biting, because Motor City Mania starts right now. Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host David T. Pike, and we're diving in right now. As always, to those that are coming back to the show, I just want to say thank you all for coming back. Thank you all for your view, your support, your patronage. Thank you all for everything that you do. You guys are an awesome crowd, and I'm so thankful for each and every one of you. And to those that are coming into my show for the very first time, I just want to say welcome on in. Hopefully you guys enjoy the content. Thank you all for giving my show a shot, and hopefully I gain your subscription. And to everybody, I just want to say God bless. Let's dive into the content. Hopefully you enjoy it, and let's get going. So, here's the thing, folks. When we talk about this Lions offense, there's been a lot of good things to talk about with this offense. It's been one of the most consistent. It's been one of the most effective, explosive. It's been one of the most exciting offenses to watch in the NFL over the last year and a half. There has been virtually almost nothing this offense has not been able to do for the majority of the time. And when you think about this offense, there are 2 primary characters that have to be mentioned in terms of how this offense has come into being. First and foremost is Ben Johnson, but also Jared Goff. But we're not talking about Jared Goff today in terms of the first and foremost. We're talking about him as kind of like a side or as another type of piece of the puzzle here. The main component for this episode is Ben Johnson. And when we take a look at Ben Johnson is a guy that, along with Jared Goff, has brought just a extremely prolific offense that has a massive amount of production. Probably one of the most prolific offenses that the Lions have had in their entire franchise history. And that's talking about offenses that include Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson. That's talking about the Barry Sanders years. I mean, you're talking about a very explosive, prolific, dynamic offense. And Ben Johnson and Jared Goff definitely deserve all the credit they get for how they have made this offense into that machine that it is. And like I've said, when you talk about Ben Johnson, I mean, he is one of the hottest names in the NFL right now as far as becoming an NFL head coach eventually. Some people think that he should probably wait a couple more years because he's only been an offensive coordinator for 1 year. I don't know if some teams are going to wait that long because, again, they will go after whoever the hot name is, and they want to bring them in because it brings excitement, it brings hope, it brings a sort of energy to the new team that they're trying to reassemble with that new head coach. I'm not saying I want Ben Johnson to go. I definitely don't want him to go. But I'm just simply saying that's the reality. That's the scope of the NFL right now. However, though, when we talk about this Lions offense, when we talk about Ben Johnson right now, there is a persisting kind of nagging problem that is starting to rear its ugly head a little bit, in that maybe the luster, maybe the shine is starting to fade off of Ben Johnson a little bit. Now, this sounds, trying to say this coming from my perspective, almost sounds completely sacrilegious because I have been extremely high on Ben Johnson. I've been extremely high with the praise, with the kudos that I've given to him over the last year and a half, because virtually damn near anything he's wanted to run has worked. However, though, we also have to kind of step back, take the rose-colored glasses off for a moment here, and we have to note some of the red flags that have kind of popped up here and there throughout the last year and a half, not just over the last 2 weeks, to kind of give us at least a little bit more of an accurate depiction, an accurate description of what really is going on with this Lions offense, particularly right now, and how we should realistically evaluate Ben Johnson. So that's kind of what we're doing here. That's why we're kind of looking at Ben Johnson. What the hell's going on? Why it seems like he's missing in action, or this offense is kind of missing in action right now. So that's what we're going to do here. So the first thing we need to evaluate, we need to look at and observe here with Ben Johnson is the play calls. Because I'm going to be honest here. As much as I've loved Ben Johnson's creativity in terms of his offensive play design, and let's be fair and honest here, he has done some real doozy of play designs, and we'll talk about that here in a moment, but we're talking about play calls right now. One of the biggest issues, one of the biggest gripes I've had with Ben Johnson is his play calling at times has been problematic. And there have been several examples that I can give, and there's some generalizations that I can give that I know some fans will instantaneously know exactly what the hell I'm talking about as soon as I bring it up. Case in point, there have been times when we're in third and short situations, like 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, whatever the case might be, and you have to think about it. Over the last 2 seasons, we've had some 2 really dynamic power bruiser backs that can pick up those short yardage situations, no problem whatsoever. But instead of giving the ball to the running back on 3rd and short, all of a sudden, what happens, Ben Johnson will call some sort of a pass play, and it's like, listen, you just picked up the majority of the yardage to get you to that spot. Why not give the ball to the running back one more time, pick up the first down, and then pass? But instead, no, you're going to pass the ball on 3rd and short. Now you have us in this really short 4th down situation where Dan Campbell is more likely than not going to potentially try and go for it. Whereas if you'd have just ran the ball, we'd have most likely had a much more manageable in top of that 4th down, or possibly even getting the 1st down. So for me, it just doesn't make any sense. It's problematic. It's just not really making any sense to me. It has no logic. And again, let's just go back to this game that we had against the Packers here. Again, when you think about this whole nonsense that I'm talking about here in terms of play calls, somebody in my comment section brought this up. I don't remember who it was, but it was a great observation. I'm going to use it here. The majority of the time that I remember watching that game, Jared Goff was under center practically the majority of the game. There were a couple of times he went in the gun, but the majority of the time when Goff was in the game, which was the whole game, he was under center. Now, here's the thing. Gun has a couple of options to it that allows the quarterback to get a couple of things more so than what it does under center. One, it gives him more space from the offensive line and the defensive line, so that way he has a little bit more space and he feels a little bit more comfortable, which also in turn means he gets a little bit more time in the pocket. So if you have a dominating pass rush that's getting after said quarterback, it gives you maybe that extra half second or second to really allow the quarterback to survey the field. So for me, let's go back to that Packers game. The Packers' defensive line was rushing the ever-living crap out of Goff. He was pressured 50% of his dropbacks. You would think that Ben Johnson would have made that alteration to say, okay, maybe let's stop going under center so much and let's try to go out of the gun a little bit more so that way we can give Goff a little bit more time, give him a little bit more protection so that way he can survey the field. But that really didn't happen. We still tried to go a lot out of under center in terms of I formations, power formations, whatever it was, and it just didn't seem to work. So that was one thing that I noticed. Either way, the point I'm trying to get at here is regardless of whatever the down and distance is, if it's a short down and distance, whether it's because he's under center or in the gun, whether or not there's a dominating pass rush or not, there are times when Ben Johnson makes play call decisions where I'm just literally popping my eyebrow up and I'm just like, are you sure that's really what you want to do? Are you sure that makes a lot of sense? Or I'm just scratching my head and I'm just like, I don't understand what you're doing. Now again, I'm not claiming to be an offensive coordinator. I'm not claiming to be an NFL coach. But even I can sit back and be like, does that make the most sense? Does that really have the most logic for the situation that we're in right now? And I know a lot of fans have said the same thing and have thought the same thing because they've expressed it to me. So that's the first thing that I wanted to bring up as an observation of Ben Johnson, is his somewhat problematic play calling at times. Now, Here's the next thing that I have to talk about, and this kind of piggybacks a little bit off of Ben Johnson's play calling. Sometimes it's his situational awareness, because I have to be honest here. There are times it seems like Ben Johnson is more willing to push the envelope and take more chances than actually taking a play that should make sense. And here's exactly what I mean about this. Again, going back to the play calling. When you're in a short situation, you would think you'd go for a run, something to pick up the short yardage, so that way you can convert the downs and get to a first down. But for me, there are times that whether it's the field position, whether it's the situation in game, whether it's the down and distance, whatever the case might be, there have been times, like say for example, we're in third and medium, and rather calling a run or a short pass play so that way we can either pick up the first down through a short pass or pick up the majority of the yardage and maybe go for it on 4th and 1, all of a sudden, Johnson will dial up this long pass play. We saw it a couple of times last year in 2022 where it was like 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1, and freaking Johnson dials up this long ball throw where Goff's throwing it down like 40 yards down the field, and it's like, why didn't you just do a short yardage dump off or maybe just a power run to pick up that short yardage? And to me, the thing that I have to understand about this when I'm talking about this is that what we saw yesterday what we saw with the freaking, with the Packers game, which was 2 days ago, my days are kind of blending together here, is that there were times it seemed like that Campbell was wanting to give Ben Johnson the benefit of the doubt to go and get the points on 4th down, trying to get the 7 points, trying to get the touchdown by going for it on 4th down, rather than just taking the easy points with the field goal. Again, I talked about this in yesterday's episode. I'll put the link to that one back up at the top. And for me, when you take a look at that, there were 3 chances where we could have had points from field goals, which ultimately would have probably won us the game 31-29. But rather, Campbell decided to go for it on 4th down, trying to get a touchdown, where it's like, listen, you don't always have to go for it on 4th down. Sometimes it's just better to take the points. Sometimes you don't have to be aggressive. Sometimes you don't have to be risky. Now, I'm not saying Ben Johnson's over there chirping in Dan Campbell's ear saying, oh, let my offense go out there and do this. Let my offense go out there and make this play. But what I am saying is maybe Ben Johnson should probably talk to Dan Campbell, or maybe say, you know what, man, I don't think this is a good situation for our offense. Let's just take the points. I know Dan Campbell is aggressive. I know he likes to go for it on 4th down. But sometimes the best thing to do is be like, okay, this is not the time to go for it on 4th down. We need a spark. We need some points. We need to try and keep this game a little bit more manageable. Just kick the damn field goal rather than trying to go for it on 4th and 7 or 4th and 5, whatever the thunder it is. Just take the easy points. That's why you have a field goal kicker. That's why he's on your roster. He's out there to make field goals. He's out there to make 3 points. I'm going to just tell you this right now. For all my older Lions fans, I'm just going to say this. We won a lot of games in the early 2000s and 2010s because of Jason Hanson. When you have a field goal kicker that can go out and make field goals, and again, I know some people have problems with Riley Patterson, but it's like, listen, Riley Patterson has shown he can kick a field goal to about the lower limits of the 50-yard range. All the field goals that we could have had were 52 yards or shorter. That's within his range. Let him go out and at least have the chance to make the points, which is a lot better than trying to go for it on 4th down when you failed to do it 5 times all damn day. That to me just makes no sense. So for me, it's like, sometimes I feel like the situational awareness, Ben Johnson kind of needs to chime up and be like, listen, man, just take the points. We don't need to risk it. We don't need to get aggressive every single 4th down. And I also think that sometimes Ben Johnson needs to realize, again, if it's a short down and distance, you don't need to throw a bomb. You don't need to get too crazy or wild with it. Just get the easy yardage. And again, I understand that it sounds like I'm just bashing on Ben Johnson, but understand what I'm trying to say here. I love what Ben Johnson brings to this offense. I love his creativity. I love the kind of spark he's given to the offense. But sometimes the better thing to do is just play it safe. Be traditional. I understand we're all looking for exciting. We're all looking for explosive. But there's a reason why the traditional method still has a place in the NFL. That's what I'm simply trying to say here with Ben Johnson. Sometimes be a little bit more traditional. Sometimes try to stick to the roots rather than being all crazy creative. Now, that's the situational awareness. The next thing I'm going to say here is this. Usage of players. This has been one that a lot of people have been screaming about at Ben Johnson, and it's particularly happened this year. As I've said before, Ben Johnson is one of the most creative minds in the entirety of the NFL when it comes to offensive play design. And he has made some really wild plays that have been absolutely memorable here in Detroit. Such ones are the Penei Sewell catch coming across the back end of the line, which picked up a first down, if I recall correctly, against the Vikings. Then there was the play in 2021 where we did the end-around reverse to Tom Kennedy, who threw that bomb to freaking Khalif Raymond against the Packers. That was a very memorable play. Then you take a look at this play we just had against the Packers where Ben Johnson is using Malcolm Rodriguez or Rodrigo as the fullback, and he goes out and he makes a catch for the Lions on offense. Again, we're seeing Ben Johnson be very creative in using some of these players in certain plays. But to me, however, one of the biggest gripes that I know a lot of people have with Ben Johnson is his usage of some personnel has been puzzling at times. And I'm specifically referring to Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams. I mean, don't get me wrong here. Both of these guys have been more utilized over the last couple of weeks, especially J-Mo, and Jahmyr Gibbs has been sprinkling in a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But for me, if you realistically want to think about it, outside of the recent utilization that we started putting more on J-Mo and Gibbs, you have to think about this realistically here. Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams are two of the fastest guys in the NFL. Their speed is just deadly. You have these guys can run blazing fast 4.3, 4.2 40s, and to me it's like, okay, I've tried to pay attention as much as I can when these players are on the field. I'm going to say this right now. I don't see a whole lot of time when both of those players are on the field, and to me that is a bit of a problem. It's like, listen, you've got two dynamic, explosive weapons. They're very unique. They're very hard to contain. Why not take advantage of that speed, of that explosiveness more often? Because I'm sorry here, ain't no way in hell a defense is going to be able to cover both of those guys at the exact same time. Because if you try to cover the one, the other's going to get open. If you try to cover both of them, okay, fine, but somebody else is going to get open somewhere else. I feel like that sometimes Ben Johnson is not utilizing the weapons he has to the full ability to what he could possibly use them for. And to me, it's like, listen, we've started to see Jameson Williams, especially over the last 2 weeks, and especially this game against the Packers, where it's like, listen, now we're starting to see him become more integrated into this offense. Now we're starting to see what he could really do as an explosive weapon at wide receiver. And I love the fact that we're starting to do that. But here's what I got to say. Why not put both of them on the field and really stress the hell out of a defense? Because if you've got that much speed on the defense, plus Khalif Raymond as well, think about that. You have all three of those guys on the field at the same time. I don't care what defense you've got. You are not going to be able to cover all three of them. And even if you can, somebody else is going to get open. Somebody else is going to bust it. So for me, it's like, use the speed, use the weapons, utilize what you have to the best of your ability. So for me, I can understand why some fans have been a little bit irked about the fact that we're not using our players as much as we could or to their best possible potential and talent based off of what they could offer to this offense. So to me, that is one of the problems I also have with Ben Johnson. It's like, listen, use these players for their God-given talents for what they have to offer in this offense. Just use them. Don't need to be too conservative with them. Let them go out there. Let them play. Stop holding them on a leash. So there's that. Now, I understand I've been talking about Ben Johnson here for, going on the last 16, 17 minutes. But we have to understand something here. It's not just Ben Johnson that's having problems with this offense. Yes, he is the head man. He's the offensive coordinator. He's the play caller. But there are other areas we need to talk about here. Right now, we need to talk about the poor offensive line play. This last game against the Packers, particularly true. It was horrible. Absolutely miserable. Jared Goff, like I said, pressured 50% of the time on his dropbacks. He was pressured 25 times out of 50. He had 17 hurries. He was sacked 3 times. That is a horrible showing from the offensive line. But we have to understand something here, which kind of is going to tie into this here. Throughout the year, the Lions' offensive line has also given a lot more pressure up towards Jared Goff in comparison to last year, because I went back and I checked the numbers. If you take a look at right now, Jared Goff, throughout the entire 11 games that we've played this year, because we're 8-3, he's been pressured 121 times this year. If you go back to last year at this time, he was only pressured 106. That's almost a 30-point difference between the two. Also, you have to think about this. This is not as drastic of a difference, but Goff has also been sacked a little bit more this year. So when you add more pressures, you add more sacks, that's going to cause a little bit of a problem. But then you have to think about the other thing the offensive line is really keen on here, the running game. We have to understand how much Dan Campbell loves to run and pound the damn ball. Well, here's the thing. I'm going to say this right now. I fully believe this. We got improvements at the running back position. I believe Jahmyr Gibbs is a better version of DeAndre Swift, and I believe that Montgomery is a supreme upgrade over Jamal Williams. But let's think about this, folks. If you go and try and find this out, which I did, yards before contact, that pretty much means how much yardage the running backs are picking up before they're getting the first initial contact from a defender. I took a look at what it was last year in 2022 for Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Last year, Jamal Williams was picking up 2.5 yards before he had any sort of contact from a defender. You want to know how much DeAndre Swift was picking up? 3.8 yards. That's pretty damn good. But then when you flip it on the opposite end to 2023, David Montgomery, you want to know how much yardage he's picking up before he gets hit? 2.8. So in essence, there is virtually no difference between these two. There's a 0.3 difference between Jamal Williams and David Montgomery. That's not good. Because then when you take a look at Jahmyr Gibbs versus DeAndre Swift, Jahmyr Gibbs is only picking up 3 yards on average before getting hit. That's almost a whole yard difference between him and DeAndre Swift. So how in the thunder are Jamal Williams and David Montgomery almost the same, but yet DeAndre Swift and freaking Jahmyr Gibbs, there is a whole yard's difference there? That to me makes no sense. This offensive line, even though it's been dealing with injuries, is still more steady than what it was last year, and we've got better running backs, but yet there's virtually no difference in terms of what's going on with the offensive line's ability to keep defenders off of our running backs, except for the fact DeAndre Swift was almost getting 4 yards before getting hit, and Gibbs is only getting 3. That to me is a problem. Because it's like, listen, this offensive line has been touted so heavily, and it's like, I don't know what's going on with the offensive line. And if I was Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, I would be getting really, really pissed, excuse my language, with the freaking offensive line. Because it's like, listen, you guys are the freaking backbone of this team. Why are we having a problem protecting the quarterback? Why are we having a problem keeping defenders off of our running backs so that way they can find those holes and have those explosive plays? Because if you think about it, we've had a couple of explosive plays, but the only running play that I can think of that is a truly explosive one was the one where Demo freaking had that 75-yard run against the freaking Chargers. Other than that, it's kind of like, yeah, we've had a couple of 15, 20-yard rushing plays that have really popped off, but it's like, listen, Gibbs is a freaking nightmare for defenses. Why are we not getting him more in open space? You have to start taking a look at the offensive line. That's why I brought that out there. Now, finally, I know people have been waiting for this one, but we also have to talk about Jared Goff. Yes, I'm a Jared Goff defender. I like Jared Goff. I love Jared Goff. I think he's a great quarterback for the Detroit Lions. But let's be fair here. Over the last 2 games, Jared Goff has struggled with turnovers. He has 6 turnovers over the last 2 games. That's not good. That's not good, and I'm not going to try and say that it is. But we have to understand something here. Jared Goff, who has normally been very clean, very conservative with the ball, has been more aggressive over the last two games, trying to force plays to make things happen. Why? Because when the offense starts falling behind and it starts getting behind on the scoreboard, the quarterback's naturally going to try and get a little bit more aggressive with the ball to try and make plays. So that's one aspect I can think about this as to why Goff has more turnovers. But the second thing I have to bring up here is that of the 4 of the 6 turnovers that Goff has had, 4 of them are not his fault. The other 2, yes, they're definitely his fault. But 2 of the fumbles, not his fault. The way I look at it is this. The one fumble where his arm was going forward, that should have been called a forward pass. I don't care what you say. If it had been for any other superstar quarterback in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, whoever else, they would have called it a forward pass. The play would never have gone past that. And then when you take a look at the fumble that happened on 4th down, that freaking fumble doesn't really matter because we were not going to convert the down anyway. So whether or not it was a fumble and turnover on downs doesn't make a difference. The ball was being turned over. Then you think about, and plus on top of that, that fumble was also when Goff was getting hit from behind because freaking Taylor Decker completely whiffed on his block from the backside. So that's, again, not on Goff. Then you take a look at the 2 interceptions that I talked about in a previous episode. The 1 interception, Goff freaking got tipped at the line when the guy reached over Frank Ragnow's head. Goff can't do anything to control that. The other interception when Sam Laporta ran into the defender, Goff again can't control that. So 2 of the turnovers that he's had, yes, they're definitely his fault. The 1 interception where he tried to thread the needle into that coverage and the linebacker was there, that's totally his fault. The 1 fumble where he had where the ball was all the way out here and he didn't have it high and tight, that's definitely his fault. But we have to analyze every single turnover for the merits of what it has to provide. So just simply saying, well, Jared Goff has 6 turnovers, okay, yes, that's the bare ball minimum. But let's actually analyze what's going on during those turnovers before we start freaking trying to put him on a stake and burning him, shall we? But again, that's what I'm trying to say here. That's sometimes the cost of doing business. That's the NFL. You're going to have days where you're just really not in a groove, and Jared Goff has not been in a groove the last 2 weeks. But I have to pose this here really quickly before I finish this. Despite the turnovers, despite the bad games that Jared Goff has had these last 2 games that we've had, you have to think about it here. When those turnovers come into play, it does make it much more difficult to win. I know that. I acknowledge that. But it doesn't make it impossible to win. But you have to understand what also Jared Goff is providing to this team. Despite the last 2 games where he's been really bad as far as keeping the ball out of the opposing team's hand, he's still a top 10 quarterback. Take a look at his stats. He's got a 68 completion percentage almost 3,100 passing yards, almost 8 an average to throw, 18 touchdowns to only 8 picks, almost a 60 QBR, and almost a 100 passer rating. He's a little bit short, but either way, every single one of those except the QBR is top 10 or better. So despite 2 really bad games from Goff, he's still in the top 10. So for me, here's what Jared Goff needs to do. And this is where I'm going to end this whole thing. Jared Goff needs to get back to what he did at the very end of last year when he went on that streak of just not throwing picks at all and was completely clean with the ball. That's what needs to happen. That also means that the offensive line has got to step up its game. It's got to start opening rushing lanes for the running back. It's got to start protecting Goff better. Oh, that also means that Ben Johnson has got to be smarter. He's got to be much better with how he uses his players, understanding situational awareness, understanding his play calls in terms of position on the field, in terms of down and distance, in terms of what's going on in the game. It all plays together. I know I started and did the majority of this episode on Ben Johnson, but the whole point is it's a team effort. This goes back to what I said. You can't just pony everything on one individual player. It's a team effort. Everybody is accountable for what goes on with why an offense or defense does good or bad. Now, I will say this. It does mostly reside on what the coach is doing, but the players, again, do hold some responsibility. And this goes to what I'm talking about with Aaron Glenn and the defense. Yes, the players do have to make plays, but if the coach does not put them in the right spot or does not have the right play call or usage of them, that again falls on the coach for not putting them in the right spot. So again, I'm trying to tie this all together because I know a lot of people have been getting on me because I just keep going after Aaron Glenn. There is a reason for that. It's not just because I don't like the dude. It's because I'm looking at what the man's doing and he's not doing his job well. Hence the reason why I'm saying the exact same thing right now that Ben Johnson could do better. But again, even with Ben Johnson having 2 bad games, Ben Johnson has been way more consistent with his offensive unit than Aaron Glenn has been with his defensive unit. That's my point. But anyway, this episode's gone on way longer than what I wanted it to do, but this had to be a very comprehensive, very in-depth episode so that way you guys understood what I was trying to get at here. So, with that having been said, I'm now going to say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode that I got coming at the end of this one. I also encourage y'all please to do one of these 3 things. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you've got to do so at the time. Or you just subscribed, you've not yet had a chance to do so. Again. I want to highly encourage y'all, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, and you guys are so amazing whenever you do, and I appreciate every subscription that I get. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure you also turn on that bell notification icon as well whenever you do subscribe, so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Subscription numbers are always going up, but we want to make sure you turn on that bell notification icon, so that way once I push something out, you never miss anything that I've got. But I also want to encourage y'all this. Please share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it everywhere and anywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. And with that, I just want to again say thank you all for tuning into the show. Thank you all for your view, your support, your patronage. If I hadn't gained your subscription and I just did, thank you all for joining the family. It means so much to me. And if I still haven't gained your subscription, hopefully you'll come back again and hopefully I'll get another shot to do so. But again, to everybody, I just want to say thank you all for your view. And with that, I also want to say God bless. Hope you enjoy your day. Hope you enjoyed the show. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.